Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. My name is Florence Koendrink, and I'm an independent consultant in child protection and alternative care reform, and I've been involved in alternative care for over 16 years on 4 continents. I have recently brought out 2 books. They have the same basic content, and one is written for parents adopting children from institutions and one for people who are involved in moving children from institutions to families. Both books explain how children develop in families, how things are different when they grow up in institutions, what the consequences of those differences are, and how families can support children to overcome the delays and challenges arising from institutionalization. The books provide information that is useful in developing skills and understanding as a parent or a caseworker, but it also provides information useful for advocacy, for moving children out of institutions. The advocacy side is helped by the detailed information given about just what it is that makes institutionalization harmful to children. This video will focus on the information useful for advocacy. I will give a brief summary of some of the effects of institutionalization based on these books, to explain why people keep hearing that institutions harm children. At the core of the problems caused by institutionalization is the fact that there tend to be few, if any, opportunities for attachments in institutions. Due to limited staff, high staff turnover and heavy workloads for caregivers, combined with a regimented care system that requires children to adapt to it rather than care being adapted to children's individual needs, it is not possible to meet children's psychosocial needs in an institutional setting. This includes opportunities for attachment. As adults, it seems to us that relationships form automatically. You meet someone, you get to know them better, and a bond develops. This may be a friendship, an acquaintance, a working relationship, a romantic relationship, or many others. However, it turns out that for that to happen automatically later in life, certain brain development has to have taken place. In effect, we had to learn how to form attachments and relationships. We just don't remember doing that. If that learning and brain development cannot take place in early life, forming and maintaining relationships can become very challenging and sometimes even impossible throughout life. Attachment is also important because the bond that is formed allows children to learn some very important things that they are unlikely to learn from people who are not a reliable, nurturing presence in their life. This includes the understanding that other people have thoughts and feelings, something a small child does not understand because they cannot feel or see other people's feelings. This is called theory of mind. And in turn, you have to have an understanding of theory of mind to be able to develop a conscience. Because if you do not understand that other people have feelings, it is not possible to hurt them, and therefore ethical considerations about whether it is right or wrong to treat other people a certain way become irrelevant. Children also depend on an adult they are attached to help them develop a sense of who they are and what their worth is. Babies are born with no opinion about that at all. They develop their identity and self-worth based on how they are treated by meaningful people in their life. So how is attachment usually learned? What is the brain development that needs to take place for us to be able to learn to form relationships? A baby is born completely helpless. They are unable to change anything about their circumstances, and they are unable to self-regulate, to calm themselves down. When the baby is uncomfortable because they are hungry, need a nappy change, are too tired, or frightened by something, there is nothing they can do to change the situation. This discomfort causes stress, and all the baby can do is to express distress by crying. In a family, when a baby cries, one of the parents or another close relative usually comes to check on the baby. They find out what is wrong and do something to fix the situation. They feed or change the baby, or calm them and help them sleep. And once the problem is solved, the adult also provides co-regulation. This means helping the baby lower their stress level and calm down. The experience of having discomfort removed, needs met, and stress levels brought down leads to the release of various hormones in the baby, which cause a sense of relief and joy at those needs being met. When this happens repeatedly, connections are created in the brain associating needs being met with joy and relief. When these needs are met fairly reliably by one or just a few people again and again, another association is created between the joy of having needs met and the person who reliably and responsively meets those needs most of the time. When this happens, just the approach of the person who is associated with making things all right can start to calm the baby down. This connection in the brain between the joy of needs being met reliably and responsively and the person who generally meets those needs forms the basis of the template for how to form attachments. These are the connections that have to be in place for relationships to form automatically later in life. The brain creates many templates in order to function as efficiently as possible. Thinking about things requires a lot of energy. When there is a template in place, it is not necessary to think everything through anymore. The brain just follows the templates and keeps comparing the current situation to the situation that it was made for. Only if there is a difference between the two is the brain activated to think and make decisions about the current situation. One example was just given on the development of a template for attachments. Another example of a template, which might be easier to relate to, is when you move to a new place and have to find a particular shop. When you go out to that shop the first time, you notice everything that is happening around you. You are aware of the traffic, road signs, different buildings and shops, and at every street corner you pause and consider whether you have to turn left, right, or go straight to go where you have to be. You are thinking about and processing every detail. However, as you have lived there longer and are more familiar with your surroundings, you pay less and less attention to how you get to this particular shop. This is because a template is being created to guide you to the shop without needing to actively think about it. Sometimes you can hardly remember how you got there. Once you can just follow the template for getting to the shop, you will only start thinking about where you are going if something is different, for example, if there is a roadworks. We have templates for almost everything that happens repeatedly in our lives, not just for how to get somewhere or how to do practical things such as get dressed, make food, or do parts of our job, but also for how we react to and feel about things. It is important to be aware that even at our age, many of the templates we use are very old. Some of them were formed in our first year of life, in a time from which we have no memories. Yet we still follow the templates created then. This is one of the reasons why the harmful effects of institutionalization can affect children for many years or even their entire life. Because while they are in the institution, they will have created templates based on the living circumstances they encountered there, and these templates will continue to guide their behavior and reactions. When you ask someone what a child's basic needs are, they will often tell you food, hygiene, shelter, and sleep. These are important basic needs, but they are not all of them. And because most people think of just these practical needs as basic needs, I tend to use the term essential basic needs, so kind of doubling it, when I am talking about all basic needs, including both the practical needs and the psychosocial needs, which are just as essential for proper development, well-being, and even survival. These psychosocial needs are physical contact, attention, stimulation, and attachment. As Sapolsky pointed out, we readily think of stressors as consisting of various unpleasant things that can be done to an organism. Sometimes a stressor can be the failure to provide something to an organism, and the absence of touch is seemingly one of the most marked of developmental stressors that we can suffer. We have discussed how development is supposed to happen, and usually does in a family situation, in what is sometimes called species-typical rearing conditions, meaning what is being offered to human children in families all across the world, irrespective of different cultures or traditions. Now we need to look at what is so different in an institution. In institutions, there are usually few caregivers taking care of many children. They work in shifts, have very heavy workloads, and staff turnover is high. This means that there is not much time to spend with individual children, and it is certainly not possible to provide reliable, responsive care. Children are expected to adjust to a regimented care system, rather than care being adapted to their needs. This means that when a child is distressed, has a high stress level that they are unable to lower themselves, there won't be someone who will come to co-regulate to help them calm down again and over time learn to self-regulate. Needs are not reliably met, and there are no set people who are always around and can be depended on to meet those needs. So the brain development that forms the foundation of the template for attachment does not have the chance to take place. The result is challenging behavior, more often described as children being bad. This challenging behavior is a direct consequence of the living conditions in an institution. The brain is aware of how important it is to have psychosocial needs met to enable proper brain development. This will make it activate survival strategies that make the child attempt to fight for having those needs met. For example, by provoking negative attention when positive attention is not available. Because in terms of brain development, getting negative attention is much better than getting no attention at all, even if it's not a very pleasant experience. Not having psychosocial needs met is also a signal to the brain of danger, because it stands in the way of proper development and can even endanger survival. So it is an appropriate reaction for the brain to activate a high stress level, hoping that this defensive state will help the child get back to a situation that is better suited to support their overall development and safety. When stress is raised to a high level, the child will be in a state of fight or flight. When this happens, he will not have much access to the areas of the brain involved in complex thinking or absorbing information. Everything in his brain and body is completely focused on short-term survival, and anything not needed for that is suppressed. This makes the child very reactive, unable to control his impulses, and likely to react aggressively, because he feels like he is under threat. This causes a lot of challenging behavior. Additionally, we have briefly touched on the fact that the living conditions in institutions are not those required for proper brain development. When opportunities for brain development are not present, it cannot take place. This means that institutionalization causes skipped and delayed developments in many areas, as has been shown in many studies. There are certain behaviors that we find very acceptable in, for example, a 6-year-old, but not in a 14-year-old. When the 14-year-old behaves like a 6-year-old in certain situations, simply because his brain never had the opportunity to develop beyond the point of a 6-year-old in that area of life due to conditions in the institution. This is seen as challenging behavior and often punished harshly, even though the 14-year-old really cannot help it and is unable to act his age. In this model, which I developed to boil the information from the books down to its bare essence, you find a summary of what was just discussed on the left-hand side in red, the summary of what goes wrong in institutions, with on the right-hand side in green how well-supported placement in a family can reverse some of the damage done. As we move from the left-hand pillar to the right-hand pillar, when a child is placed in a family, the family needs training to be aware of what the child has experienced and the effects this has had on his or her development and behavior. They need to be provided with ongoing support to enable the child to catch up as much as possible. This is necessary to make the placement of the child in a family sustainable. How close the eventual results will be to those of a child who has grown up in a family from birth will depend on the experiences of the child, as well as on how well the family is supported in providing the child with what he or she needs. But very significant improvements are almost always seen. The conclusion is that the harm caused by institutions originates from the fact that institutions do not provide species-typical rearing conditions for human children. This makes institutionalization very harmful for children, with consequences that stretch across their entire life. And this is why every effort needs to be made to ensure that children grow up in families and that families receive the support needed to make that possible. Thank you very much for your interest and time. I hope you will help spread awareness about how institutions harm children living in them. If you would like to order the books that this video is based on, you can find links to order them on the publications and webshop pages of my website, www.familybasedsolutions.org. Thank you very much.